Number 3. Alzheimer's patient asks wife to marry him after falling in love for a second time. Love is wonderful the second time around, but it can be all the more special if you don't remember the first time. For Peter Marshall, who suffers from early onset Alzheimer's, forgetting his past has meant a bittersweet chance to fall in love with his wife Lisa and ask her to marry him all over again. Peter and Lisa have been married for 12 years. At 56, his illness has progressed rapidly, but no matter what turn his condition takes, Lisa remains steadfastly by his side because even if he can't remember her name, he knows that he loves her and that she loves him. Last winter, as the Connecticut couple sat on the couch watching a televised wedding, Peter had an inspiration. Not realizing they were already married, he proposed, and a surprised Lisa happily accepted. And so a date was set. Lisa's event planner daughter donated this
and Museum. Bill McKay. Bill's a tireless local advocate. He is also the community director of Space Coast Pride and the vice president of LGBTA Democratic Caucus. And finally, Jeff Schoep, who is the founder of Beyond Barriers, former president of the National Socialist Movement. All four of these speakers bring a little different perspective to this subject. And it's very, very important for us, I think, as a community to really examine what's happening in our society. Now, first, I'm going to hand the floor right over to our vice president, Karen Houston. She's filling in for our president, Raed Al-Shaibi, who's not able to be with us tonight. And Karen, I'm going to hand the floor to you. This is Karen Houston, our SCPA vice president.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate that very much. And welcome to everyone to our Space Coast Progressive Alliance event here tonight. Let me give a few thanks out to everyone. First of all, to our APC committee members that put this event together. You must realize that sometimes that the people that we're especially the ones right here right now, they lead busy lives, and it's very difficult sometimes to reach out to them. And our APC people on this particular event were Ellen Jones, Daniel McDowell, Barbara Eda, and myself. And thank you so much, APC as an Action Projects Committee. They're the ones that put all these wonderful programs together each month. And I want to give thanks to them for all the hard work that they've done. And of course, to our wonderful speakers tonight, we thank you for taking the time out. I know how it is sometimes at the end of the day, looking at another Zoom could be a little bit much, but we appreciate you so very much. We're looking forward to hearing from you tonight. And thank you so very much for all that you've done. And as always, we like to ask everyone to please remember to renew your memberships. We here, Space Coast Progressive Alliance, rely on our members. And we're hoping that we can even get more members. If you know anyone who's ever hasn't seen one of our events, please encourage them to join the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. Um, and it's by calendar year now. Every first of the year, that's where we start our we used to go month to month, a month that you sign up. That's what it used to be, but that's no longer the case. January 1, that's the beginning of our calendar year. Um, Please check out our updated website and also our Facebook page and like us on Facebook. If you go to our Facebook page, you'll realize that we've had some wonderful programs, and maybe that'll encourage you to come along and join us. We always need you. We'll not stop begging you to join us. Please come and join the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. And our speakers tonight will determine what our action projects are. I mean, our action items are. Every time we have an event, we ask our speakers to leave us with some type of action item. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to see these things and to get all excited about them and do nothing with it. So if you wouldn't mind, whatever our speakers come up with, this topic especially, it's a hot topic right now. Hate in America, and we're so horribly divided. So please, whatever our speakers can come up with as an action item, take heed to that and listen to what our speakers are telling us. Our next meeting will be August 5th, and it's an open discussion about planning the future of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. As I said before, we need you. We are asking you to join us and to stay alive and to thrive and to put on these wonderful programs like this. We need you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Phil. I thank you all. And let me say to Phil as well. Phil has been a wonderful moderator. He's always been here for us. He was our past president, one of the hardest working people you ever know. I want to thank Phil. I want to thank our comms guy, DP, who couldn't be with us tonight. I want to thank our comms committee and our wonderful Vicky Impoko, who puts our website together and everything, and Dan McDowell, who sets he does a lot of stuff. I won't tell you everything about Dan, but Dan's the one that sets up these Zooms and goes through the headache of making sure that everything's right prior to it. Thank you all, everybody that's a part of Space Coast Progressive Alliance and keeps us going strong. Thank you. And so I'll turn it back over to Phil.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you for your leadership. It's at a time when we really need you. So thank you very much for all that you do for our community. Well, everybody, again, the Space Coast Progressive Alliance is going to be looking at a subject that is near and dear to our hearts, especially, I think, lately. Hate is nothing new. Of course, people have been hating each other for pretty much all of human history. But when it leads to people to attack each other, to kill each other, to attack our government, to take over the Capitol, we know that we have a problem. Things are very, very serious, and it is more than time for us to talk about this. And I would like to remind everybody that's here tonight that you'll have your chance to ask questions. We'll have an open Q&A after our last speaker talks. So it'll be your chance to be involved in the conversation. And again, we do encourage each of our speakers to propose an idea for an action item, something that you would like people to take away when they come away from this event. Because if we just have this lovely conversation and everybody forgets about it when they're done with the program, well, we have failed. Our goal is, of course, to change the world, to make it a better place. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about our program tonight and our speakers. And for those who have just joined us, we have 4 wonderful speakers tonight. Our first, Anthony Colucci, president of the Brevard Federation of Teachers. Sonia Millard, Cultural Center Coordinator for the Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore Memorial Park and Museum. Bill McKay, who is the Community Director of the Space Coast Pride and VP of LGBTA Community or Democratic Caucus. And finally, Jeff Schoep, founder of Beyond Barriers, and former president of the National Socialist Movement. It has been said that hate is a poison that, left untreated, will eat away at your soul. Probably a very good examination of that. But it takes so many forms, and we see it manifested in so many different ways. So what I'd like to do is just hand the floor right over to Anthony Colucci and to say, what's your experience? What's your perspective? Anthony, you have the floor.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Space Coast Progressive Alliance for having me here. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, other board members. And thank you, fellow panelists.
This meeting is being recorded. The recording has stopped.
Okay. Thank you, other panelists, for having this conversation with us tonight. So a little bit about the Brevard Federation of Teachers. We have been the labor organization representing the teachers in Brevard County for over 50 years. When I use the word teachers, I am also referring to many other educators, such as school counselors, social workers, media specialists, JROTC instructors, and a host of other folks. That's just how we define them in our contract. I am proud to say that in this 50-year history, right now we have our largest membership that we've ever had. And I'm pretty proud of that accomplishment because we don't have the largest amount of teachers we've ever had. So to me, one thing I got to point out is somehow we've managed to unify a very diverse group of educators within this hateful climate. I said at the last school board meeting, I think I may be the last elected representative in Brevard County who is not elected on a partisan basis. My members are liberals, my members are conservatives, my members are independents, and my members are everything in between. What we've been able to do in this climate is focus on what we have in common, focus on our unity and our goals to make public education and our profession better. I think we've built really strong relationships with our members that have allowed us to do that. I always got to give a plug for our school, so I'm sorry. Plug for our school is coming. Brevard Public Schools are fantastic institutions with so much to offer. the diversity of the programs we have at these schools, the college and technical education programs we have are phenomenal. Our educators are phenomenal. Our science programs are would blow your mind to see what some of these kids are doing in high school. So just a little plug for our schools. I think probably most of you have been watching what's been transpiring at our school board meetings recently. I know I've seen Bill there a few times. And our school board meetings have become hate-filled 2 to 3 hours every other week. And it's hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to listen to. It's hard to say, this is my community. This is Brevard County where I've lived for 20 years, and these are the people who live here. I'm just going to be honest. It's hard. Big part of how I believe we've got into this hate-filled environment is because words are powerful, and we must choose our words carefully. And we must choose our words to do good in the world. Unfortunately, we know that there are politicians, media personalities who are choosing to use their words to divide, to make people angry, and ultimately to cause chaos in our country. We know that. And we've seen that on the national level. We've seen it on the state level, and we see it right here in Brevard County. And as these folks who are supposed to be trusted individuals are spewing all this nonsense, people are listening to them. But what they're not doing is listening to their neighbors. They're not listening to someone like me, who, yes, now I'm the union boss, but 5 years ago I was your kid's teacher. All right. They're not listening to their neighbors. They're not listening to their kids' teachers, to whoever it may be. And I mean, let's face it, all sides have been guilty of not listening to the other side. Now, specifically a month ago, it was the LGBTQ issue in Brevard County schools that became the hot button issue. Wasn't an issue at all. Nothing has changed with Brevard County policy. It wasn't being voted on. It was a disgruntled former school board member trying to keep herself relevant, trying to get on certain news channels to have a platform for her next move, has stirred up something that was non-existent. And I was talking to some of our team yesterday about LGBTQ issues, and thing is, we're like, this isn't new. Our school system has been dealing with this for a long time, dealing with this, for lack of a better phrase, let me say. But it's not really become an issue because our schools are doing a good job with it. Our schools are filled with caring people who want the best for all kids. And it's not been 100% perfect, but they found a way to navigate these difficult waters. However, when people start shouting and making accusations and playing on people's fears, and I guess I really need to mention that let's face it, fear mongering, playing on people's fears has been a big part of this. Somebody's coming into your kid's bathroom and they're going to get your kid. Well, that sounds scary. Not happening though. It's not happened yet. It's not a real issue. And then, this has shifted into the latest hysteria and fear mongering, which I'm sure if you've turned on the news, you're hearing about it. And that is this discussion over CRT, critical race theory. You're not going to hear me talk a lot about critical race theory because critical race theory is not being taught in any school in Brevard County. It is not being taught in any school in the state of Florida. The same folks who are promoting charter schools, promoting privatization, who are the ones responsible for the abysmal funding in our schools, are the same ones screaming about CRT. And you start putting the pieces together and say, you know what this is? This is an attempt to destroy our public schools. Those of you who watched that press conference with Randy Fine the other day, you might have cued into the major part of that, and that is, and I've passed a bill that makes it students whose families make up to $95,000 for a family of 4 to get a voucher to a private school. That's what it was really about. Because although that group out there, you might have saw my picture flash up there from a board speech when I said, CRT is not being taught in our schools. So they try to use that to show that the school district is lying. But then Randy Fine says, well, CRT is actually not being taught in our schools. I'm just, I'm afraid it could be taught in our schools. So this CRT thing is very ugly right now. It's very ugly. It feels very like there's a lot of hate surrounding this issue. People don't understand it. People aren't talking to one another. They're not listening. They're hearing the talking heads say, this is a problem in school. They are indoctrinating your children. They are indoctrinating your children. That's terrifying. Don't indoctrinate my children. It's not happening. Brevard County's had a policy on indoctrination for 10 years. If we had teachers indoctrinating students, I would know, because I would be in those meetings representing them and making sure that their due process is being held. It's not happening, but boy, does that sound scary. And I don't care what side of the political playing field you're with. Nobody wants their children, their grandchildren indoctrinated. But you know what they're doing? They're doing just this. I'm talking about critical race theory instead of talking about how we have a massive teacher shortage in the state of Florida, how our schools are under-resourced, how our kids are over-tested. Instead of talking about why don't our kids have one-to-one technology after seeing how needed it was last year during the pandemic, after talking about how our veteran teacher pay is basically the worst in the nation, I'm talking about something that does not even exist in our schools. It doesn't even exist in our schools. And just for informational purposes, African American history, the Holocaust, they're going to still continue to be taught in our schools. And I'm sure Sonia will tell you more about it. It's state statute that African American history is taught in our schools and the Holocaust. But what this has become, this hateful rhetoric, isn't going to be an attack on our teachers, because anytime somebody now hears a discussion of race, of civil rights, of slavery, of Jim Crow, or any controversial topic, and they don't like it, they don't like the teacher, or there's something they're concerned about with the teacher, they're going to hit a button and they are going to report that to the school district, and the school district is going to they are obligated to do an investigation into that. And I would tell you, I'm very concerned about this rhetoric, as I was with the LGBTQ issue. But I mean, just 2 days ago, I got a call here in the office, and I mean, I don't know what else to call it, but besides a threat. Hi, I'm so and so. I'm a community member. Can I share my views about something? I try to be a listener. I try to engage in dialogue because I know that's the source of hate and misunderstanding. So I said, sure, I'll be happy to listen to what you have to say. Started off respectful, and then it became threatening. And I'm going to come after all these teachers, any teacher who teaches a critical race theory, who indoctrinates, we're coming after them. And we're going to use the full extent of the law to get them. And do you know, I marched with Dr. King, and do you know who Bull Connor was? And blah, blah, I'm a veteran. And, and by the way, let's face it, you all probably know this. The same people who are quoting Dr. King are the same people who would have thought he was a radical socialist back then.
Anthony.
Let's face it. So, this man is screaming at me, and after 5 or 10 minutes and threatening my teachers, many of them who probably share a lot of political views as he does, right? I said, sir, do I get to say something? No, you don't get to say anything, and blah, 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 and blah, and hangs up. So this is what we're dealing with. How do we, improve hate if we can't even listen to one another?
Time's up, Anthony.
What's that?
Time's up.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you guys. I didn't think I could really talk for that long straight, but apparently I got a lot inside. I got a lot of angst inside. Thanks, guys.
Anthony, if you would like to close, we don't mean to just pull the plug on you there. She's essentially ringing the bell there, but if you feel comfortable that you're closed, we'll move along. Do you have anything you want to close with?
I just would reiterate, I'm fortunate enough to be forced to listen to a diverse group of people, because that diverse group of people is what keeps this organization going. And I don't always agree. It's frustrating at times, but in the long run, we're a better organization and we're a better school district because of those diverse opinions.
Well, I'll tell you what, for all of our viewers, if you have not been to a school board meeting in a while, I highly recommend it. It is an important low-level governmental agency that many people are not paying attention to, but we all should. School board meetings across this country have become more and more heated, more angry, less, I guess the message is that many people in the audience are just angry. They come in angry and they like to vent, and it doesn't really lead to a productive or reasoned discussion. And it's having regular citizens who could come in and lower the temperature, de-escalate. It's a challenge for the board. It's a challenge for the superintendent. One of the interesting things about this, I guess, and Anthony, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but much of this anger is adults. The kids, we always think about kids fighting at school and kids being a problem and kids being angry and kids being bullies. Some of the biggest damn bullies are actually the parents. And that's an unfortunate reality. Probably always been that way. But
Phil, I actually had that written down and I overlooked it when I was speaking. But yes, the difference between our kids in these schools and our parents is completely different. It's just night and day. Our kids are good, kind-hearted, very accepting, very, very different than kids when I was growing up, and then the adults, not so much. Some of the adults, to be fair, some of the adults.
So for those of you that have just joined us and tuned in, you're with the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. We're having our monthly First Thursday event, which is actually happening on the second Thursday here in July. And the event is called Hate Lives Here. We're talking about hate with 4 fantastic speakers. Anthony Colucci, we've just heard from the Brevard Teachers Brevard Federation of Teachers, by the way, one of which was my wife, who I support the BFT myself. Anyway, Sonia Millard, who is the Cultural Center Coordinator for the Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore Memorial Park and Museum. Bill McKay, Community Director, Space Coast Pride and Vice President of the LGBTA Democratic Caucus. And Jeff Schoep, who's the founder of Beyond Barriers and former president of the National Socialist Movement. And when we're done with our panel, we'll be opening the floor to all of you that have joined us tonight. We'll have a Q&A where you can actually ask questions, get answers, interact with our speakers, and we'll have a very open discussion. And by the way, for those of you that are on Zoom, you're currently muted, but once we open the floor, you'll be going to depending on your platform, whether you're on a computer or a phone or an iPad, look for the little reactions button. And there will be, if you hit that, it'll allow you to raise your hand. When the time comes and we're asking for people that want to ask a question, you'll be using that little reaction button to raise a hand. We'll be able to identify you and then take your questions via Zoom. Let's move on to our next speaker, Sonia Millard. She is, again, the Cultural Center Coordinator for the Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore Memorial. And by the way, folks, if you have not been up there to visit, I strongly encourage you to do that. It is a wonderful center, a wonderful place to visit. It is the Moore story is very, very sad, but it's very important, and especially for those of you that live here on the Space Coast. This is part of our heritage and our history, even though it's difficult. But if I might, Sonia, you now have the floor. We look forward to hearing your views.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the lovely invitation to speak at Space Coast Progressive Alliance. Hate lives here. You know, the story of Harry T. Moore and Harriet V. Moore is really about hate, history, and hope. It should also be considered a cautionary tale where, if we're not careful, history may easily become prologue. This history is one we dare not repeat. America must not let fate be an invitation to more injustice. You and I should not allow today's prejudice and race crimes be a preview for more racial abuse to come in the name of ignorance, in the name of fear, and in the name of hatred. However, sadly, history has proven that human beings do tend to make mistakes. And with the current political climax, is evidence that there's pockets of society which has devolved to the extent that Jim Crow behavior has resurfaced in American society. Today, around the globe, extreme right-wing organizations shows themselves without restraint. They're encouraged to reveal themselves with a sense of flawed pride and eager defiance. But dark chapters in history should be our lessons, not our fate. Harry and Harriet Moore opened the door. They emerged at the beginning of a crucial chapter in America's history, and events surrounding their life set the stage for a turbulent future urgently in need of correction. See, he was the most hated Black man in the state of Florida. He was before I Had a Dream Today. He was even before By Any Means Necessary. How come nobody ever heard of Harry T. Moore? I'm going to take you on this journey real quick and come back to Hate Lives Here. Killed on the day that Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. You know, Mary, little baby, the bright and the morning star. Some even say the Alpha and Omega. I like to take you back in time when we lived under the rules of the Jim Crow law, separate but equal. That was the law of the land. It was illegal under Florida Constitution for white and Black children to be taught in the same school, and for white teachers to teach Black students, and textbooks for Black children had to be stored separately. If Black families wanted their children to receive a high school education, they had to send them out of town or even out of state to Hampton or Morehouse. That year, Harry enrolled at Florida Memorial. The state of Florida spent $11.50 for white students and only $2.64 for Black students. See, Blacks wasn't allowed to enter the front of a store or eat at a lunch counter. I'm talking about the Jim Crow era. And when Black men came upon a white woman, they had to put their heads down and never look in her face. And better yet, they better walk across the street. I'm talking about the Jim Crow era. This was a time that Blacks were unable to swim in the community swimming pool. And when some Blacks did do so in Jacksonville, Florida, they poured lye into the pool. This was the Jim Crow era, pure hatred. Now, in 1927, Harry was promoted to principal of Titusville Colored School, and Harriet started teaching as well. By 1934, he did a transformation that would change Harry's life, his family, and ultimately the state of Florida. See, in 1937, Brevard School Board spent $69.05 for white students and only $27.04 for Blacks. And the Black school often closed after only 5 months, just in time for citric harvest, with the announcement by the school board, "We out of colored school money. Close the colored school." Harry Moore understood that the unfair practices couldn't go on. So he was backed by the Florida State Teachers Association. And he asked Thurgood Marshall to come on down and be his legal defense fund. You know what? Harry's friend Gilbert agreed to be the plaintiff, and they took the school board to court, right? They lost the first court case. However, it would take them many decades and dozen or more lawsuits before the teacher salary battle was won in Florida. See, Harry Moore lost the first battle, but he would eventually win the war. So if filing lawsuits over teacher salaries could get you fired in the Deep South here in Florida, standing up against lynching could just get you killed. But remember, we're talking about hate lives here. First, a few facts which may surprise you. The disturbing truth is that for decades, Florida was a haven for lynchings, which flies in the face of our image as a tourist paradise. From 1900 to 1930, Florida had the highest rate of lynchings in the South. I'm talking about the rope was hung around a tree, a noose around a Black woman's neck, the noose tied tightly around a Black man's neck. I'm talking about a noose around the neck of a little boy or a little girl, not quite 10 years old now, in front of all the townspeople, in front of the neighbors. They making a mockery and provoking fear. A noose that sometimes they would cut off the body parts of the male and stuff it in their mouth. 4.5 lynchings to every 10,000 Blacks, pure hatred. From 1921 to 1946, Florida had 61 lynchings, and that was twice as many as Alabama. And Harry T. Moore just threw himself in it. He wanted to know all about the lynchings. And if you thought that rocked Florida, they said, "Who is this Negro? He's getting too big for his britches." You know, Harry T. Moore started implementing the NAACPs throughout the state of Florida. He understood that we have to vote. He got over 116,000 Blacks to vote at a time when many Blacks were scared to do anything. So he mobilized, he energized, and he got all of the Blacks just looking for a better day to live here in the state of Florida. Let me say this. Harry and Harriet Moore was really just like you and I, right? They went to work. They didn't ask for help. They didn't want handouts. They always wanted to help their community. They had a love for God and their country. And even though their country wasn't showing the love back, they loved their country. They both understood the importance of education and that a high school diploma is not enough, but a college education can open up some doors for you. Besides, they were school teachers. Harry was a principal. And like most of us on the line tonight, we take an interest in our community. We involved on many different organizations for the betterment of mankind. Harry saw injustice of another time when men and women were being lynched. He stepped in. Now I want you to think about how you spend Christmas with your family. If you celebrate, can you smell the food cooking? Can you see the presents under the trees? Hear the laughter from the kitchen. In 1951, on Christmas night, the Moors celebrated Christmas pretty much like you and I. They visit family, they enjoyed the delicious food that was cooked with love. And, maybe they was a little sad because Evangeline was coming home the next day on the train, but it was also their 25th wedding anniversary, a day that they exchanged their vows in the sight of God. And they enjoyed the cake and they laughed and they danced and they went to bed. What they didn't know was that something evil was lurking in the groves because of the color of their skin and because of their activism. They crawled under the house, the KKK, like a snake. They lit that dynamite and boom, at 10:20. They said that was the loudest bomb heard around the world, and people from as far as Titusville and Scottsmore came running, and they thought NASA blew up. And they said, Professor Moore's house. Harry was literally blown to the ceiling. The FBI determined that they hit the ceiling so hard and caved into the crevices of the cracks of the floor. They had to be dug out. The house was destroyed on Christmas night because of hate. The color of a person's skin. The color destroyed because he cared and wanted to make a difference in the lives of Black people and white people and in the community. Killed. Harry T. Moore died on the way to the hospital, and Miss Moore died 9 days later, and they were the only husband and wife ever killed in the civil rights struggle. 3 great tragedies. 1, that they were murdered. 2, that the murders have never been solved. And 3, perhaps the most tragic, their sacrifice was forgotten. They were left out of the history books and out of the hearts and minds of most decent human beings like you and I. See, Harry T. Moore had the audacity to do the unthinkable for a Black man to do before the country was paying attention, before there was a movement, before the TV cameras was capturing the dogs attacking Black people and children in Birmingham and New York City. When hate permeates the South and law enforcement was complicit, we have to wonder, does hate live in our hearts? Or does it live in our brains? See, history is infinite overlapping series of cause and effects. It was not long after the death of Harry and Harriet Moore that civil rights could no longer be ignored or taken for granted, with so many courageous Blacks stepping forward to risk their lives too. In the words of Harry T. Moore, freedom never dies. However, hate lives in the hearts and minds of some people. So we must remember the past and then participate and become involved in a solution for a better America. Together, without shame, without stigma. Now, you asked us to give you an action item, and I want everybody on this line, this is my action item to you. I want you to, and I'm not going to date myself because usually, remember, it was a telephone book, the little black telephone book. But I want everyone else to take their cell phones out and go down that list of contacts. And don't say it out loud, but when you go through your telephone and you look at your list of contacts, I want you to look at each person in your telephone and say, do I have diversity? Do I have another religion? Do I have someone else, another color? Do I have diversity inside of my friendships and my telephone? Because your telephone is sacred to you. So those are people in your inner court. Watch this. I don't want to hear about one or two, you know, that one friend, that two friend. I want you to be intentional. Then when you see that maybe you're not quite up to par, and I did this, I really did this myself. That's when you be intentional and you go out and you meet other people of different races. We are not in this world alone. God didn't make us long rangers. We're here on the fabric of each other, woven together through humanity. So when you look in your phone, my action item is to be intentional, see how diverse your friends are, and if not, meet some new friends, join some new organizations, get involved and make a difference, because history is writing now, the books for later. And what are you going to say to your legacy, to your children? What line in the sand were you on? What line in the sand were you on? I just want to say thank you again. And remember, don't allow hate to live in your heart or your mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we really appreciate the very inspirational words and a great action item. And I would personally like to add an action item for everyone. Please go drive on up, visit the Harriet V Memorial Park. It is definitely a place that is full of emotion. It's a terrific learning experience, an opportunity to learn history that I think most of us need to learn more about. It's just a lot of fun. It's just a fun place to go. I've certainly enjoyed my visits there, and I certainly encourage you to go there. Action item, good action items. By the way, for all of our speakers, it is such a shame that we're not live, they're not with a crowd of people, because I'm telling you, you would have a very enthusiastic audience right now, people up clapping and standing here. So for right now, I have to be your cheerleaders. But I tell you what, that our audience thanks you for being here for all of our speakers. Our next speaker, Bill McKay, Community Director, Space Coast Pride, Vice President of the LGBTA Democratic Caucus. He's also a member of the SCPA board and a long-term supporter of the SCPA. Bill, you have the floor.
Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
Thank you for letting me speak. And actually, I've got two tough acts to follow here. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this. This whole meeting came about when the APC was sitting around and thinking of topics. And I had just actually gotten back a couple days ago from the school board meeting locally here, and I was really angry. I was tired. I was fed up. I couldn't believe what had been transpiring. When it was literally, I had to step back and take a look at myself. And when I looked at I wasn't actually at the meeting that was the worst one. I went to the one after it. But I was looking on the YouTubes that everybody had, and they had recorded things, and I was struck by the amount of children that were in the crowd. There was actually a gauntlet that our LGBTQ plus students and families had to walk through to get into that board meeting, and there were children and parents and Christian organizations literally spewing hate at these people and these students and children. It's like, and I was just struck, and it made me have to think, where does this come from? Where has it become okay in our society to teach children hate? And where is it okay in our society to do it with no shame? There's something that's transpired in this last 4 to 5 years, and I can probably name where it is, but people have gotten to be shameless about what they say, who they say it to, and how loud they say it. And then that actually led me into introspection and led me back into my own childhood. And although I grew up with a very progressive family and liberal family, my distant relatives were not such. And I can remember as a child, lots of things being said, and I wouldn't dare repeat them today. And I don't think most people would. And then my parents, were respectful, because you always respected your elders back then. I'm talking many, many years ago. But they would get us in the car and they would tell us, now, that's not okay. But the reality is, it's a different world today that we live in. And I guess I was just thinking back on those things about, interestingly enough, how many of those things that were said to me as a child still exist in my brain. They literally are there, that I have to push them away. I mean, it's like I call it dog brain, where you can try all you want to change how you think, and unfortunately, it's still going to be there. It's just what you do with it, that makes the difference today. that I recognize it as something that's terrible, and it's something that I shouldn't even recognize. However, it still comes up occasionally. All of those things that were said as a child, and I'm thinking to myself, how do I permanently change that? And that's what led to this Hate Lives Here, and more or less why we chose that visual that we have, where it's the hate and the brain, because we wanted to actually have people think about how it actually exists in each and every one of us, and what we can do as individuals to fight against it. You know, it's so important that each of us looks inside of ourselves, and we can think we're as progressive, we can think, and we are. Most of the people I know are wonderful, wonderful, caring people, especially the people I know in this community. But the reality is there's always something in us that we can work on and change, you know, and recognize and reach out to other people. You know, I actually speak for myself, and I speak for the LGBTQ community. I like to think that I often speak for at-risk minority groups, you know, because I truly believe that, you know, it is here locally, and I don't say that um, loosely. The school board meeting was just a culmination. I know from friends that have been verbally attacked here. One who's an LGBTQ, actually, uh, lesbian couples, Asian LGBTQ people who have been verbally assaulted, and literally just it's as if they don't even think about it. It's just they say it, and it's like, and when I say that, it's like there. When I was a kid, it's like you used to go to these. They used to say these things in private or in a bar room or somewhere with their family. You know, now it's on the street. It's not even hidden. You know, and it's literally done brazenly, in my opinion. So when I think about this, and after the school board meeting is when I came up to think of all this, and I guess um, where this all led to was that most of the incidents here go unreported. I would venture a guess that no one here in Brevard County knows that when the first LGBTQ bar opened up in West Melbourne, there was a bomb threat. You know, literally. I mean, these are the things that are not spoken about. I mean, people don't believe that they're happening here, and they are happening here. You know, and most of them are unreported, and most of the people that are verbally abused or in this way don't report it. You know, I actually had to go. You actually have to go out and actually seek out the stories. We've had other businesses, LGBTQ owned businesses, who were vandalized. One actually shut down because they couldn't take it anymore. You know, and it's just, I don't like to think of our community in that way, and this is why I'm here fighting against it. You know, and this is why I believe that each of us, uh, if we can analyze where that comes from and actually inform other people and talk to other people. You know, the biggest thing I found today is that so much information and misinformation is being transferred online. People are not vetting their information at all. You know, people are just taking things and running with them and believing them. It's like, you know, the old game of telephone, you know, where it starts out as one thing, and by the time it hits the 10th person, it's something totally different and something so far removed from what it started as. And that's what's happening with our information, in my opinion. People see something, run with it, don't vet it, don't look at it. I actually was talking with a relative, a distant relative, in the last week. And first of all, you know, they started with uh, the election, and I actually had to say to them, we don't want to have this conversation. I trust me, we don't want to have this conversation. And we moved on to a different topic. And actually, what we moved on to was trans sports kids and bathroom issues. And I thought, wow, here we go. And it literally took me an hour to talk this one through and explain the difference between, first of all, a transvestite and a trans person, all different aspects of sexuality with my community. I'm like, Not that I minded doing it, but I thought to myself, it's like, where are you getting your information from? Where is this coming from? And worse than that, you could tell the disdain that was coming from that person. And it wasn't disdain for me. It was really odd. It's like, I'm family, so I'm okay. It was disdain for everyone else, which I thought, this is very odd. If you don't understand that I'm part of this community, then there's something else wrong here. Like it's very, very odd. So when I actually got through all of that, I actually was able to instruct them on different things and bring them around. Whether it worked or not, I have no idea. But this is the whole thing, is that we have to actually address this directly to people. And what I've actually come up with, and really, if I had to think of an action item, I'm really thinking, and what I've had to change in my life is I used to be very respectful. When I hear people say something that's just incorrect and wrong, I now say something. I'm very respectful about it, but I'm very direct. It's like, no, that's not correct. And actually, if you wanted me to take the time, I'll find the information for you and show you what it is. But the reality is, if I don't want to say this, as progressives, and I'm a Democrat, and honestly, I wasn't a Democrat until this last election, because I realized I needed to take part in the primaries. But as a Democrat, we are actually, as a group of people, generally respectful. And at least the ones I know, it's like, we don't want to rock the boat. It's like, and we're not, it's like, it's time to not rock the boat. You have to stand up, and you have to stand up for what's right. And you have to actually correct people and say, this is what the actual truth is, because truth matters. We can say that hate lives here in the brain, but we have to speak truth, because the actual fear that these people are living in, and that's what another thing I come back to when I was having that conversation with a relative. All of these things that were coming out and he was questioning were about fears. A fear of this, a fear of, oh my God, heaven forbid a trans person would come into the bathroom with them. And I'm like, these people are very private people. I guarantee you they're going to a stall. Anyway, I'm sorry, Bonnie, I'm probably running over, aren't I? No? Okay. I have a tendency to run on people.
You have 4 minutes.
Okay. The basic of this is that I recently went through a whole process of looking at my whole life and implicit bias and privilege and all types of things that I never really took a good look at, and realized that, I have a whole lot of privilege as a white man. However, my privilege diminishes when I tell people I'm a gay man. And it never really occurred to me that that's what was happening. But it does happen, and there are people, well, let's go further. Let's go, I'm a lesbian, which is a woman who's gay. Then let's go a little further. You lose a little more privilege, and then you go a little further. But anyway, I digress. And I'm going in an opposite direction. But I guess I'm looking at everyone, and I'm saying to each and every one of us that we all have the potential for hate to live in our brain, and we have to fight it, and we have to fight it verbally and vocally, and we have to make sure that when we're out in public and in places that matter, that we address things that are incorrect and misleading and information that's not what it should be, and probably lead people into areas where they may want to research a little more. Anyway, I think I've gone on long enough, and I'm going to cut myself off here. And I want to thank you all for the privilege of being able to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. I'll tell you what, and again, you'd have an audience of people applauding right now, people standing up and saying thank you. Your life story is a very important one, and it is a story of adventure and leadership and a lot of pain and a lot of a lot of stories that are tough to tell. Each of our panelists has these different perspectives, and I tell you what, I'm so lucky that we have this wonderful panel here tonight. I don't think we've had anybody else join us, but just in case anybody has, this is the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, and our event tonight is called Hate Lives Here. We're examining the issues across our society, many different ways that hate is driving people to do things that are violent, confrontational, disruptive. It's a threat to our government, a threat to our society. It's certainly nothing new. But the one thing that may be new is that we have the ability to openly discuss this in a way that I'm not sure that it's really ever been possible before in our civilization. The opportunity to have a dialogue literally around the world, via these electronic means. And by the way, I'd like to mention the fact that ordinarily we live stream this on Facebook. We have a technical issue that's happened tonight, so we're recording this event, and it will be streamed on Facebook. It'll be available later if it's not streaming at this moment. But the essence is our normal Facebook would begin streaming live as we began, and that didn't happen tonight. But we're going to make sure that this event is indeed distributed to everybody and run live. I think we might be feeding it via a couple other social media events or platforms instead. So anyway, it's going to be out there other than the group of folks that we have on the Zoom event right here. But anyway, thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate that. I'd also like to remind everybody that after our last speaker, we'll be opening the floor for all of our attendees here on Zoom to ask questions and answers, and we'll be doing that after our next speaker, who's our last speaker this evening, and that is Jeff Schoep. Jeff is the founder of Beyond Barriers, former president of the National Socialist Movement, and he has an amazing story to tell. Jeff, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Phil. First, I want to thank the hosts, Phil, Space Coast Progressive Alliance, Ellen, and your entire team, and all of the speakers that went ahead of me. Unbelievable, incredible, dynamic speakers, and it's a great honor for me to be here tonight. And this is always the most difficult part, is telling my story and telling the background. Because you need to, as a person, I'd like to remove myself from that and just talk about fixing things and the problems. But my background is something I'm not proud of. I was a member of the National Socialist Movement for 27 years. 25 of those years, I was the national leader of that organization. For those that are not familiar with the National Socialist Movement, it is basically America's Nazi party. So this is... I understand hate. I understand dehumanization, divisions, all of these things. And I came from a normal middle-class family, a good family. What brought me into this ideology as a young person was I was very much interested in history, and my grandfather had fought in World War II on the German side. My great uncles did as well. So that, even though it wasn't something that was in the home, it wasn't something that was encouraged. In fact, it was actively discouraged. That's what opened the door for me to, seek out this movement and get involved in it. And I think what a lot of people don't typically understand about movements like these is that just about anybody can become susceptible to it. A lot of times there's a lot of misunderstandings about these ideologies and the way people get involved in it. And a lot of people will say, well, we don't need to hear about this because our family's not like that. Nobody in our family would get involved in something like that. I'm sure my family thought the same thing. So it is very, a lot of people will get involved in these kind of things and not really coming from a hateful place. And let me explain that when I say that. a lot of times when someone joins these organizations, and hate is definitely a part of it, hate is fostered there, hate is nurtured there, it is a big part of it. But I want to explain the driving factors. When someone gets involved in these things, nobody wakes up one day, almost nobody wakes up one day and says, you know what, I'm going to go join the Nazis or the Klan or one of these organizations because I'm a bad guy. I want to be a bad guy or a bad lady, or, you know, I want to join this and be something evil and bad. Nobody thinks like that. It's very rare. Now, I did come across those people in my time in the movement. There was a small handful of those people that would come because we would ask them, well, why did you join? Why are you getting involved? And you know, we kind of want to know that. And in a few cases, you'd have people that would say, well, I joined because I hate Black people, or I hate Jewish people, or, you know, things like that. And typically those people would struck me as potentially sociopaths, psychopaths. There was a small percentage of those people, and there is a percentage of those people in these kind of organizations. But that's not the majority. The majority of the people that are getting into this, and bear with me on this, I know it's a tough pill to swallow at times, but the majority of people that are getting involved in these things think that they're doing something noble, think that they're doing something good, think that they're doing something positive. When I joined this movement, I thought, I'm going to save my people, I'm going to save my country, I'm going to do all these wonderful things. Of course, now we know, all of us, everyone here knows, and I know now as well, that's the exact opposite of what these organizations preach. You lose your humanity once you've been indoctrinated, once you get involved in these type of things. You don't see the humanity of the other. You miss that. It's like it's disappeared. You may join an organization like this with this open-minded outlook, where you're thinking, I'm searching something out, I'm going to join something, I'm going to do something good. That's typically why people join. So this, and the reason I'm explaining this, because some people are going to go, I don't want to hear this crap. I don't want to hear people that join this stuff are doing something good, but it's honest. It's the truth. They think they're doing something. And the reason why I'm explaining this and why I'm telling you this is because of, just like we were talking about action items, what we can do as a society, how we can fix things, how we can repair some of this damage done. Why I speak out today is to repair some of that damage done from the past. It's not easy as a man to get out in public and to admit and to say that you were wrong, especially coming out of an organization like that, where everything from their standpoint, from the standpoint of this organization, everything I said was right. You know, I was the national leader for 25 years. It wasn't a democracy. So I was always right. So to leave something like that you had been involved in your whole adult life, and then, you know, to get in front of people and admit you were wrong, like not just wrong, but really, really, really wrong. It's not easy to do. Doing something else would be a whole lot easier. But I do this to try to repair some of that damage that was done and to help other people. So a lot of people will ask, what was it that brought you out of that? You know, a lot of people wonder, is it you snap your fingers one day and just go, no, I'm not involved in that anymore? Typically not. Typically there's a series of events. A lot of times it goes with small seeds being planted. For me, those seeds being planted was it was a number of things, but a couple of people that are public figures that I can share with everybody was meeting an individual by the name of Daryl Davis, who is a Black man. He's a famous musician. Actually, he played with Little Richard, Chuck Berry. He lights the piano keys on fire. If you haven't seen him, check him out. He's phenomenal. And he's actually on our team at Beyond Barriers as well. So he's an incredible human being. When I met Daryl Davis, he was filming for his documentary called Accidental Courtesy. So he wanted to meet with different leaders of Klan and Nazi organizations. And I met with Daryl, and he was telling me a story about when he was a young man in the Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts. And he says he was the only Black boy that was in that Cub Scout or Boy Scout parade. And grown white adults were pelting him with rocks. Now, the cameras are rolling. I'm thinking I'm doing something for the National Socialist Movement. I'm going to speak. I'm going to say my piece. And I hear that story. And instantly it triggered something. It touched my humanity. And I'm thinking about my own children. And had somebody done that to one of my kids, what would have been my reaction? I won't even say it, what my reaction would have been, but anger. And I'm thinking back, Daryl didn't realize that when that was happening to him, he thought at that age, as a young man, I think he was like 8 years old or somewhere around that age, he said he thought they didn't like the Boy Scouts. And he came home to, and his parents, the Boy Scout leaders, the Cub Scout leaders didn't, they just got him out of there and protected him, shielded him, but they didn't really go into it. They didn't feel like maybe it wasn't appropriate to explain it to him at that age. His parents had to explain it to him. And he says, no, that doesn't make sense, Mom and Dad. How can they hate me when they don't know me? And that sent him on this mission for the rest of his days, and what he does to this day. And as long as the work that we do actually at Beyond Barriers is to try to understand that, because just that simple question that an 8-year-old boy would ask, how can they hate me if they don't know me? It's so simple, but so deep. Like, why would you hate somebody that you don't know? It doesn't make any sense. It's nonsensical. And within 6 months to a year after that, I met another filmmaker. Now, we did a lot of filming for documentaries and different things over the years, so this was nothing new. I met all kinds of people, but I wasn't allowing myself to be able to see, their humanity, because I was involved in this group that you're inside this echo chamber or this bubble. Everybody that you're stuck behind the barriers. This is the concept of the organization that we have now with Beyond Barriers. You've set up these barriers in your mind, but you can't see beyond them. You're trapped behind them. So that's the understanding I want to get across to people, is that the individuals that are in this, that not all hope is lost, that these people still can be reached. Maybe not all of them. We have to be realistic too, but we're bringing people out all of the time. And it's about tapping into that humanity. So when I met Dia Khan, another filmmaker, a Muslim lady, she had come over from England, and it was for the film White Right Meeting the Enemy. In that film, now I had met Daryl and only spent a short amount of time with him, but with Dia, we were filming over the period of weeks. Like, it was a lot of filming because this is a big production, and got to know her really well. And we're sitting in a, there was a lot of things that were said, but one thing that hit me really hard again was tapping into that humanity. She was telling me about how, as a young person, as a child, how her and her brother had to run away somewhere in London and hide from nationalists or skinheads that were after them. And I don't remember exactly the story right now, but I remember hearing about it and watching her and seeing the pain in her face. Literally, I could feel it in the air. Like, if you want to call it a vibe or an energy or whatever, I could feel it. I could see it in her face. And that hit me like getting kicked in the chest by a horse. That got to me. And that was, for me, that was the final seed. I still didn't quit right at that moment, because I'm trying to process this stuff in my head. How do I get out? How do I leave? Do I, I'm going to have to cut ties with everybody that I know, just about every single person I know. I'm going to have to start over. My business was involved in this. This was everything I had done. I had fears that I couldn't move on, or all these things. There's so many different things that go into that. But I knew at that point, this so-called noble mission that I thought I was on for all those years, I saw it now. I saw it. I can't be part of this. This is not something I can't do it. Would it be easier to stay and keep doing it? Sure. But as an idealist, as someone that thought they were doing something good, now that I truly see it, now that I have acknowledged it, I would be a hypocrite to stay longer. So I couldn't stay, and I walked away from that. So when you talk about hate, I want to pose this question, is it hate or is it fear? and this polarization that we're experiencing in the country right now, this division. Even we're seeing it on a level now, and not to be alarmist, but we're seeing it on this level now that I don't think we've seen, at least in my lifetime, I've never seen it. And it's not just on racial things now. The Democrats and Republicans, like some of the other, one of the other speakers mentioned this too, even in the political sphere, the Democrats and Republicans won't talk to each other. They're missing this dialogue. And Phil, I think you said it at the beginning about being nonpartisan. One of the speakers had said something about being nonpartisan, and how, maybe it was Anthony, but how important that is too. And that's something we do in our work at Beyond Barriers. But I'm try to be mindful of the time here, but there's so many different things. So other factors for de-radicalization and how we can get people out of this is, and how much time do I have left?
You have 2 minutes, but take a couple extras. We really can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was supposed to be keeping track of it here, and I kind of lost track. But when people are involved in this, I just want the public to understand that it's very much like a cult. And when I was involved, I had heard that term. I'd heard people say it. A lot of the different girls that I was dating from outside of the organization, they would want to come and see what I do and things like that. So yeah, come along. One after another, they kept saying, Jeff, this organization, this stuff you're involved in, it's like a cult. And I'd get angry at the time. I'd say, what is wrong with these girls? Why do they keep saying I'm in a cult? And I would get upset about it. I'd say they didn't know what they were talking about. They were wrong, because I wasn't able to hear them. After leaving and processing these things, oh, it's very much like a cult, because you're conditioned like a cult. Everything, your whole world is in there, even your news and your music and all the things that you take in, your movies, whatever, your books that you read. We talk about confirmation bias, where confirmation bias is a big problem in this sphere, because you believe that set of so-called facts, or what you believe to be your truth, is the truth, and it's not like that. So I want to say, like, engaging people with dialogue is so important. Having empathy for others, understanding, respect, and kindness. These are some of the 5 major things that are so important, and education as well. I think if we can do anything, and this was for the action point, I'm sorry, I missed it earlier. For the action point, if we can educate our upcoming generations better than what we've done now, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the educational system, but I'm saying what we can do to get them to understand. Like when I was in school as a child, all right, we had International Day, one day out of the year. You got to sample some food items and learn a little bit about different countries. And it was cool. It was a lot of fun. That's not enough though. That was just one day. We need something where people can understand the different things about different cultures and learn about it. I've got people that we're working with at Beyond Barriers that we're bringing out of these organizations, a guy that's in his 60s that tells me, I don't think I've ever met a Jewish person in my life, Jeff. So we're going to bring him to meet with people in the Jewish community. There's we deal with this all the time. So if we can break down those stereotypes, we can stop people from getting involved in these type of organizations in the future. That's one of the things that we do. And we also try to educate them, the ones that are in there, and bring them back out. Because if we can reintegrate them into society successfully, those are less people that are doing this sort of thing. And just in summary, I want to say, it's not to, I've been criticized before where they've said, oh, he's just trying to get his old Nazi buddies out of the movement. That's what he's trying to do. And that's not a bad thing. But what I want to say is, saving one person that was involved in a hate group, that's just bonus points. Like if we can get them out, great. But what I'm thinking of, and what really spurred me to do this work that I do now, is some of the mass shootings, the mass violence, the killings that were happening in synagogues, mosques, churches, Walmarts, these kind of places. If one person that is going to walk into a place and start shooting innocent people for no reason other than the color of their skin or their faith or whatever, if we can off-ramp that one person how many lives can we save? So it's not about saving that one person, it's about saving the innocent. And that's, for me, that's repairing the damage done from the past, from the guilt and the weight that I carry from my past, to fix that, to try to repair that damage. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll tell you what, I think, thank you so much indeed. Again, the room would be very much applauding. You have come from such a very dark place and come to a much better place. But I think the warning is that for all of us that think that, you know, we could never fall into that trap, it would never happen to us, it could never happen to our family. The lesson is, it all starts with the man or the woman in the mirror. For all of us, it is very easy to fall into the trap of hate. It is very easy to be angered and to forget that you have to walk a mile in the moccasins of the other person to understand their perspective. There clearly is a higher ground. There clearly is a better place to be. And many of us, as Bill McKay said in his presentation, you know, you sit down with your family, people that you love the most, and sometimes you find yourself facing a pretty dark image, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's much easier to say, no, we won't talk about that. But I think we have to, you know, and it's, boy, I tell you what, it's a problem for me. It's a problem for most of us. You know, I love my family, and there are places that we just can't seem to go, and it's probably my fault. Bill, your messages are personal, they're heartfelt, and I am so proud of you for stepping forward to share them with us, because this is not easy. This is not an easy topic. It's not like talking about the climate or, you know, pet dogs or whatever. This cuts right to our hearts, our souls, our minds. It's psychology. It is, you know, I'm lucky that I've had the pleasure of traveling. And I think, honestly, one of the best things that I would recommend to anybody is take your family on a trip. Go somewhere else. Meet people that are different. Get out of this country and go, you know, eat different food and see different, but you don't have to go that far. One of the things about our country is, of course, that we can just around the corner go find a different church, a different synagogue, a different restaurant, you know, eat food from a different country, you know, and talk to the people that work there, and doggone it, if you realize we're all the same. We really are. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin, whether you're a man or a woman or a boy or a girl or trans or whatever. We're all the same. We really are. Once you cut through the fluff, it is the lesson, is that when we find that in our heart, when we find that in our soul, suddenly the hate flows away. It's a beautiful thing if you can find that. Anyway, this is our chance to turn the floor over to our guests. Again, those of you that are joining us on Zoom, I'm going to ask you to go to the little reactions thingy, give us a raised hand, and we will call on you. And this I guess is again, in the different platforms, it's in different places. But if you can raise your hand, we'll be able to see who you are. And I see our first hand right up, and it is Bonnie Ida. Bonnie, please, if you could take yourself off of mute, please ask your question.
I've had the pleasure of watching Jeff online a little bit, and I'm just going to ask him to tell one more story, the Seinfeld story. I think a lot of people here would really enjoy it.
The Seinfeld story.
Yeah, well, I think that you told the story about watching Seinfeld, that had some influence. So riots. It's so funny. And
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it was the creator of Seinfeld that he made a show on HBO, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Is that?
Maybe.
But anyways, the show is a lot of Jewish people are in it, and it was my ex-fiance. She goes, I want you to watch this show. And I said, what is it? She goes, oh, it's from the creator of Seinfeld. And at the time I was still in the movement, and I remember saying, he's Jewish. Everybody in that show is Jewish. I don't want to watch that. And I was making a big to do about it, a big deal out of it. And she's like, please, I'm asking you just to watch one episode with me. Just watch one episode. I have a feeling you're going to really enjoy this show. And I, begrudgingly, finally, I, gave in. And she was right. And I became a big fan of this show. Like I've seen every episode, and there's like, I don't know how many, 8 seasons or something, but I've seen every episode. And this is, it goes back to what we think we know. When I was in the movement, I used to tell people, people used to tap me for speeches and different things like that as an expert on the Jewish people. And you know what? I didn't know anything. I thought I knew all kinds of things about the Jewish people, but having experiences with the Jewish community, meeting with people from the Simon Wiesenthal Center, who are absolutely incredible, attending Purim this year at a synagogue, or with Jewish people, and doing all these things and speaking at synagogues, and just getting to know the Jewish community. It was exactly the opposite of everything I thought I knew. And that's why I was saying how important I feel like education is, because if we can eradicate that type of thinking and those old hatreds and those old misconceptions about one another, we really truly are more alike than we are different. We all really are, want the same things in life. And I think that's incredibly important.
It's a very, very.
Thank you, Jeff. And I just had fun picturing you secretly watching this.
I know, right? Thank you.
And by the way, Jeff, do you have an action item, something that's tangible that folks that are watching this can do when the program is over? What they can step away from it and do something. Do you have an action item for our folks?
I think it has to draw back to that education. If we can educate one another, a lot of times we don't say, like, I wouldn't encourage somebody just from the Black community or the Jewish community or the LGBTQ community to just go up and walk up to a Klansman or a skinhead or somebody involved in this stuff and just start having a conversation. It takes a unique individual like Daryl Davis or somebody like that to do those sort of things. It's not for everybody, but I think just try to keep in mind that these are human beings. And a lot of times just being kind, I think, really shocks a lot of people. I know so many people that have left. One guy covered in tattoos, head to toe, and swastikas and all this kind of stuff. And he had left. He was stranded on the side of a road and couldn't get a hold of any of his brothers in the movement. And what he had got, individual from the Black community saw him stuck out there, pulled over and helped him repair his car, get it on the road and all that. And for him, that was it. He was done. He was done in the movement. He said, this complete stranger, somebody that should have probably feared him or not wanted to stopped anyways, and just did a good deed. And I had experiences like that too, just before I was coming out. And a lot of the people just having those little experiences. So I know it's difficult and not everybody can do it, but sometimes just that act of kindness, just being nice to somebody else, it may plant a seed. You may not see it right then and there, but it may plant a seed that makes a difference later on. So that would be my action item, I think, Bill or Phil.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is sometimes the smallest human to human contact, the human to human interaction that can change a mind. I've certainly had my mind changed by things over my life, where you stop and you think, oh my God, I never thought of it from that angle. Oh my gosh, how could I have been so blind? I mean, there's an element of humility too. I think that probably all of us have to find in our hearts to admit that it's hard to admit that you're wrong. It's hard to admit you've made mistakes, and that's a gift to be able to find that humility in our makeup. I see we have Shannon who's got her hand raised. Shannon Roberts, we'd love to have your question. Shannon, if you can unmute yourself. Can you hear me, Shannon? There you go. We got you.
Is that good?
Yeah, but we can't see you. We're actually looking over your head.
Okay.
Oh,
and
okay.
that's okay.
All right.
You're okay.
Look at
Anyway,
it.
this question is for Jeff. I was wondering if you would comment, Jeff, on the point you made about, fear versus whatever, as opposed to power. And the question is the demographics of the country changing so much. Do you think that the white supremacist movement, so to speak, is born out of fear that as the country becomes more multicultural and different groups become more dominant, that's a factor? If you could comment on that and also help us with anything we might do to help the face-to-face understandings that you referred to that made a difference to you.
Yes, fear is, and I should have probably explained that a little better, but you're right. Fear is one of the biggest driving factors. And I didn't see it at first, but when I had met Dia Khan, and a lot of times she would say, it's kind of interesting, the political stuff you're talking about, but Jeff, it sounds like fear. And at the time, I was not ready to hear that, and nobody that's involved in it likes to hear that either. They'll say, we're not afraid of nothing. We'll fight everybody, and that's, you literally are at war with the world every day when you're involved in this stuff. So fear is really truly what it is, and that's something that I wasn't able to process until I was out. And in some of the studies we're doing in the research department at Beyond Barriers with academia, and we're finding that is one of the key main factors that are pushing this. So it's this fear of a lot of people in the movement worry about white genocide. They feel like the other races are going to come after them for the things that past horrible things that white people have done in throughout history. So they think, they're going to get revenge on us. They're going to come after us for those things. So that's where the fear comes in. And fear is a much stronger emotion, in my opinion, than hate. Because if you fear, and think about it this way, if you fear your family's under attack, that your family is going to be genocided, that someone's coming after you, that breeds hate. That makes you feel like, I'll do whatever I can to defend my family, my people. And they truly believe this stuff. I know it sounds ridiculous to a lot of people. Like, how would the white race be genocided, off the planet? It doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but these are the things that they fear. So it is incredibly important that we look at those things. And we try to, I think, as a society, not focus as much on what our differences are. Of course, we can see, different people have different skin colors and things like that. But does that really matter? Does it really matter what color somebody's skin is or what God they worship or don't worship? We all have things that we have a whole lot more in common than we do differences. So yes, fear is where it's coming from. And I think if we can kind of eradicate that fear, a lot of the other problems that come with it will dissipate.
It's funny you mentioned skin color. There's one guy that I know that his skin is green, Yoda, who of course is famously quoted as saying, "Fear leads to hate and hate leads to the dark side." You know what? Even though that's of course from science fiction, it's real. It's actually a very valid point and a lesson that all of us can learn from. We actually have a question coming up from our chat room. And that question is for Bill McKay. And the question is, in light of so much attention on the LGBTQ plus community, what advice or suggestions do you have for the parents with children in that community facing hate speech?
Wow. Okay. I've talked to a lot of people in our community, and the best advice we can give is to not engage them in the same manner. We have to not I'm gonna put this. You should engage them, but in a way of love and kindness, because part of the problem is that if someone is going to accost you, they don't see you as a human. They don't see you as a person. They see you as something that's okay to assault. And I'm not saying if somebody comes up and decks you, you don't defend yourself. That's not what I mean at all. but it's really important that we come from a place of understanding and love, especially in our community. And I will say this, and I'm going to ask actually Anthony to see if he has some suggestions, especially in the school systems. I know that a lot of our LGBTQ and trans students have had a difficult time, even in Brevard. But you know, what our main goal was when we were at those school board meetings was to not engage with and go to the level that they were at. We did not engage them. We did everything peacefully, and we did everything from a place of love and understanding in our own hearts. And I think it worked well for us. Anyway, I'd like to know, Anthony, what you would suggest as a teacher.
Thanks for the question, Bill. I would suggest that they find allies. There are allies at every single school. There are trusted adults that have their best interest at heart, and they're there for them. They're there for them. And you know, if anyone was having trouble, and Bill, you knew about it, and it was a school, I could find somebody there that could help them. But you know, beyond that, we have great school counselors and social workers and other folks that may be able to offer help beyond that. But I do think that your strategy of not engaging those folks help them go away, at least from the school board meetings to an extent, because you know, to them it was a reality TV show / some sort of rally that was entertainment, not thinking about the devastation, utter devastation this potentially was causing for children.
It was amazing. You know, and it actually amazes me how much of that, and because you all know that that's a public forum, you know, and it's being broadcast, and so much misinformation is being broadcast to the public, and we try to counteract it, but it's really, really difficult. And I'm not sure we can, that's another subject for another day, sorry. But I think there needs to be some kind of adjustment to that as well.
You know, one of the things I'm curious about, and that is that Jeff recommended education for the public education for kids. Do any of you have, anybody on the panel, any of the four of you, have any recommendations on a documentary, a good book, something to read for inspiration, to help, you know, when you're trying to talk down your family members, your uncle who is fuming at the table, you know, how do you de-escalate these conflicts? How do you help yourself cope with? I mean, when I think of our former president, it makes me angry. I feel, you know, these bad emotions, and you know, and it's like, you know, I get a book from you know, Gandhi or Dr. King, or you know, I mean, what do you guys recommend? Each of you, I mean, do you have a recommendation on inspirational or educational material? Each of you, if you would please, in turn. Bill, you're up. Would you like to? Do you have any recommendations?
First, I'm going to say that Robert has a question, but he also is holding up a book called "The Common Good" by, I believe, Robert Wright.
Robert Reich, yes.
Yes, and I think he has a question too. But so just so you ask,
well, I'll tell you what. Bob Cerroti is waiting. Bob, could you wait 1 second? Let me get a quick answer from each of our panelists on a recommended either documentary or a book to read. If we could just run quickly down the line. Do you have anything, Bill?
I honestly can't think of anything. That's off the cuff. But I will tell you that when I encounter family members or something, the first question I ask them is where they're getting their information. And I find that that's an interesting segue. First of all, it makes me interested in, and I look up what they're getting. And then I can actually speak to knowing where the information's coming from. And then I can actually intelligently talk to them and say, not true, not real. And never, ever, ever do I say to someone, you're wrong and I'm right. Which was
the title of a previous program that we did, of course, for the SCPA, because it's a tempting thing to say to people. You know, everything you know is wrong. Fake news.
Their ears go like this. It's like they never hear a thing you say after that. So, you know, it's approaching it with openness.
Anthony, as a school teacher and an educator, what do you recommend for education, inspiration? Do you have a book, a documentary, something you recommend?
Well, as an educator, I'm a little embarrassed that I don't have something off the top of my head to refer to. I would echo a lot of what Bill is saying, just to be a listener and not to throw judgment on what the other person is saying, to seek common ground, because really, even with some of the more difficult folks, there's always, if they're willing to speak, there always seems to be some sort of common ground to build from, even if that common ground is, we both believe we have the right to speak uninterrupted, to share our views. So for me, it's building from that common ground, which hopefully could establish a relationship enough to where you could have a hard conversation.
I see on our chat right now, somebody, in fact, a couple people have recommended the same book. It is called White Right, Meeting the Enemy by Dina Khan. And in fact, I know that Jeff mentioned that documentary earlier, doing interviews with her. One of the people says it strives not to excuse the hate, but rather to see the humanity in others, no matter how abhorrent their beliefs are. Isn't that a gift, to be able to look into the eyes of someone you vehemently disagree with and to see the humanity in them and to say, oh, and I can tell you a personal thing. I mean, I'm a retired airline pilot, but I think about what was going through the minds of the guys that were flying those airplanes on September 11th that crashed into the World Trade Center, into the Pentagon, that would have come back and hit the Capitol. And I think about what was driving them, what were their motivations, and the more you read about how they organized, that is an interesting perspective for all of us, I guess, to think people that you vehemently disagree with and have every right to hate, but to try to think about where they were. My father was a witness of the Nuremberg trial, so I grew up with this idea of the Nazis and what were they thinking and why did they do the things that they did, and to understand that, not just to hate them as an entity and to throw them into the past and say that'll never happen again, because of course it can't. Anyway, Bob Sirota, you've been so patient. Let's go ahead and take your question. Fire away.
Okay, it's good to see you all.
Great to see you, buddy.
I just want to give a quick rundown on my background. I retired in 2000. I've been a member of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance for many years. And I always seek knowledge, and I've been teaching part-time all my life. So I decided to teach as an adjunct for Eastern Florida State College starting in the year 2000. And the course I got into was mathematics. Now, the problem I have is this: how can we teach critical race theory when in the year 2016, 1 out of every 4 Americans still believes that the sun rotates around the earth?
That's a problem. And it's often raised is there, a certain percentage of the population believes in ghosts, or they believe, the craziest goddamn thing. Why there are people, how can we expect them to act rationally and to think rationally when in fact they don't? Their worldview is skewed. You know what, Bob, you're muted again. You're muted, buddy.
There I am.
You're back up.
All right. There are a whole bunch of questions at the back of The Common Good by Robert Reich, and I think it's a very apropos book for the reason that we're holding the meeting tonight. And he claims that why before the 1980s did big corporations have responsibilities toward their communities and their workers in addition to their shareholders? Why after the 1980s did the big corporations suddenly focus solely on maximizing profits and shareholder returns? Should corporations go back to their former ways? And it's really all about the inequity in wealth. I mean, when you think of the number of billionaires that we have today compared with what we had in the 1980s. I think that's part of our problem today.
And so this question is directed at any one of our speakers or all of our
Anybody.
speakers?
Anybody.
You know, this is all about the reason we do these first Thursdays is because the community is the most important thing. Like, if we don't get our communities together and if we don't talk in our own groups amongst ourselves and reach out, nothing's going to work. And actually greed and power is what is behind that. And you're right. Actually, larger corporations need to put more into their community. So, you know, I know at Pride, we reach out and we try very hard to get them to donate to us. And that's all well and good in one thing and another. But I don't see them doing anything on a large scale, the ones that are here in town. We see a few things, but I think it's a good point. You know, it starts from, that's the only time I might agree with the trickle down theory. It might actually help. You know, other than that, you know, it obviously does not help. But I think it would be a good start. You know, I think they could contribute to all kinds of things, especially our education, you know, for students and kids, because that's where it all begins. I can tell you right now, just for my grandchildren, that they don't see color. They don't see LGBTQ. They don't see these things. It's like it doesn't exist to them. They've been brought up in a culture, in a world that's all a part of their world. They don't see the differences. So you know, when you talk to them, it's kind of amazing. It's very refreshing. They say what's on their mind, and it just doesn't occur to them to think differently of other people. It's just it's very interesting. And that's where we're going to be saved in one way or another.
Jeff, Sonia, Anthony, would you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I would just add that when you mention a book, I find that when you read books about other cultures, like when I read the book about Helen Keller, that changed me when I was younger in school. So it always taught me to have compassion for somebody else that was different than me. And I was always interested in the way they lived and, you know, what happened to them and that kind of thing. And another thing, being that I'm from New York, I worked in a Jewish hospital, Mount Sinai Hospital. And, you know, if anyone's Jewish, they know they always say about the Jewish mom, right? And I had like a Jewish mom at work. And she used to always show me her tattoo from being in the Holocaust. And one day I came in, you know, feeling a little like, oh Lord, not again. And she literally hit me upside my head. And I was like, listen, why you want to keep showing me this every day? Like, come on now, right? And she said, let me tell you something. The minute you stop talking about history and what happened to us is when it's going to repeat itself. You got to always keep history in the forefront. So, you know, I presented this question to her and I said, well, let me ask you a question. If God said to you, you have a choice, you could be Jewish or you could be Black, which one would you pick? Well, we got into a tight conversation that day, and I've learned that you have to have compassion for other religions, other cultures, and then you can never put your foot into their shoe, but you can have the compassion to kind of understand what they're going through. And that's what's happening right now. Come on. Everyone's talking about this critical race theory and Black Lives Matter and all this kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is that if it was your child that just got shot and got killed, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you're going to start feeling like that's going to be your child next. So how could you not have compassion? George Floyd, for instance, so he was troubled and, you know, living on the edge, but he was still a human being, right? And I think the moment we don't have compassion is when we will lose it again. And, you know, I just like to say, again, I agree with Jeff on this, with the kindness, and then always thinking about, if you were that other person, what would you do?
Hey, Sonia, I'm curious. Have you had folks come into the center or into the museum or into the gift shop, and they're clearly there to fight with you? You have people that are coming in they're going to be confrontational, and you have to talk them down. Do you have to deal with that kind of thing?
Listen, let me tell y'all something. I could share this with you. One whole family, about 12 of them, came into the museum, and I was in my office, and the curator was taking them on a tour, and I kept hearing this child say, "Monkey, monkey, monkey," and I'm thinking, well, what are they talking about? Like, it just didn't dawn on me. And finally, after her saying it like 20 times, I got up to go see what monkey was she talking about, and she was pointing her finger. She was 5 years old and pointing her finger to the picture of Mrs. Moore. Nobody said anything, not even the curator that works for me, right? So I said, "Excuse me, sweetheart, you keep saying monkey, monkey, monkey. Where's the monkey?" She said, "Right there, right there." So that told me right away that in their household, that's how they referred to Black people. So I said, "No, she's not a monkey. Let me correct you. Her name is Mrs. Moore." So nobody in the family still said anything. So I find at times when people come into the museum, that's a learning place, right? We can't change the past, but we could change how we want the future to go. And if you don't stop people at that learning curve, they will never learn, right? And it ended up with that group of family, I literally had to escort them out because they were coming just to do those kind of things, right? So I told them this wasn't a place for them. They can go someplace else to do that. But I did have an 85-year-old man come in, and y'all got to hear this. He's a retired sheriff from Lakeland County. And one day he came in, he said, "Sonia, why don't you have a Klan's outfit in here?" So I said, "A Klan's outfit?" He said, "Yeah." So then I said, "I don't have one." So he goes, "Why don't you make one? Go to a sewing machine and make one." I said, "You got me messed up. You think I'm gonna sit down and take 2 white sheets and cut out the eyes and sew a Klan outfit together?" So I said, "Why don't you give me the one that's in the back of your closet, the one that have all of the perspiration stains and the hatred coming out of it, so I can put it right here in the museum?" Guess what he said? "Sonia, let me think about that. I don't want to bring any trouble to you. Where would you put it?" So I said, "I would put it right here, because when you come in, we have some back doors. So soon you come in, that'll be the first thing you see. This is where those kind of things belong, in a cultural center, in a museum, because it's history." Let's just say I didn't get that Klan's outfit yet, but I'm waiting. So yes, we do, to answer your question, we do get people that come in. Some people just want to come in to see Willis McCall, Sheriff Willis McCall picture. So you already know what they dealing with. But I don't get in arguments. I let them say what they want to say. Then I, say what I like to say. And then, sometimes you have to agree to disagree. And some people, like Jeff said, you're not going to change them. But what I do want to share, Jeff, when you said that, I believe me and you have some common thread here, because one of my maintenance persons grew up in a racist household. He never saw a Black person until he was 13 years old. And that amazed me. Kept touching my skin, kind of thing. And he was like, "Oh boy, I got to work for this Black lady," kind of thing, right? And I was like, "Oh boy," right? Make a long story short, it was 95 degrees outside. Compassion. Come inside. Get the air conditioner. Drink a Gatorade. So he's looking at me and I'm looking at him. So that's because we didn't have trust, right? So for me, continuously telling him to come in and get some air conditioner, sit down and talk, we started talking. And it starts with communication. So then we started eating lunch together. Then we started all going out for lunch. Then we did the Christmas thing. So what I'm saying is that he had let's say the feeling to feel okay with me, right? So he said to me one day, now watch this, "Sonia, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Of course." He said, "Why Black people don't let white people in their house?" And I was like, "What?" He said, "Why Black people don't let white people in their house?" And I said, "You must don't have any Black friends." He said, "No, I do. They make me stand on the porch." So I said, I don't know. I'd never heard of that, right? So now he retired and we was gonna go fishing, right? We always talk about he was gonna get a boat and go fishing. So we were going fishing. He came to my house and he met my husband and everybody. And then all of a sudden it clicked. I remember him saying he never been in a Black person's house. So I said, "Ron, would you like to come inside my house?" He said, "Yeah." So I let him come in through the garage, right? When he came into the garage, I said, "See, we have a dining room like you have a dining room. We got a living room like you got a living room. We got a sun porch." So then he started walking through my house, going back to the bedrooms. I said, "Now that's why they don't let you in their house. You going all through my bedroom. Come on out of here," right? So we laugh, but again, it comes back to communication. It comes back to building trust. It comes back to food, talking over food. Food makes everybody feel good. And then you start learning to have trust. And then that's when people feel free. Because if I feel free, Jeff, to speak to you, if I feel free to speak to you and ask about the LBG community, you know, you have to have some kind of trust there to know that I'm not coming from a mean place, but I want to learn, right? And I think that's what it is. We have to feel free. And you have to say to somebody, well, I don't quite understand. Can you explain this to me? Or in my experience, you know, use those kind of words instead of being like, oh, no. I just don't like the Confederate flag and that's all to it. You know, you just can't do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wish we had time to get together and have dinner tonight. Wouldn't this be fun? It is, you know, it is one of the things that we genuinely miss as a result of this pandemic is the opportunity to meet together and to have our meetings as we have for many years, you know, where we can see each other and shake hands and look each other in the eye and talk. Jeff, you want to respond to what Sonia just said? This is pretty interesting.
I'm thinking we need a soapbox for Sonia. She's a heck of a speaker, really good. And I bet you got a whole lot more stories like that. But you're right. You're right 100%. And that it is breaking down those misunderstandings. And I'm glad you mentioned it too, because we know that they're wrong. We know that the people involved in this stuff are wrong, but they don't realize it. So instead of, like Sonia said, you know, instead of saying, oh, I don't want to hear that, you know, you're wrong. I've noticed this now with the work that I do as well, with talking with a lot of people. Sometimes I'll get off the phone with somebody that's in the movement still, that's kind of on the fence, and they'll say, wow, you know, even though we don't agree, it was unbelievable that we had this nice conversation and that we're both talking and showing each other respect. Like, and to me, it's like, I want to just say, well, what did you expect? Like, well, I was going to yell at you or something? No, you know, let's have a conversation. And it means something. So when we talk about planting seeds, that's it. You know, like Sonia had said about letting the guy in her house. Now, when he started back in the bedrooms, it was maybe time to get him out. But, you know, that showing them like, hey, let's break down this stereotype. Come on in. It's probably just like your house, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, no, I think it's fantastic. It really is. And that's where we can really make a change is by having those conversations again.
You know, the Southern Poverty Law Center has something they call the hate map, and it essentially identifies the fact that there are organizations that you know promote hate of many different kinds. And when you look at that map and they update it every year, and you can look around right here in Cocoa, just a few miles from my house, there is actually a Klan office, and it's. I remember the first time I saw it, it's like, no way, that can't be. You know, is that a mistake? You know, in my own neighborhood, and the answer is, oh yeah, they're here, and that organization still exists. As a kid, growing up, you know, I kind of thought that was something in the history. You know, you see pictures of that, but no, it's very real, and it is here. And you know, I've canvassed, you know, knocking on doors and getting people. I remember stopping at a door and a family, folks Indian descent, and they at the entrance to their home there was a swastika painted on the ground. It was like, why is that there? And they described the fact that their next door neighbor has been doing it, and they wipe it off, and the neighbor comes back, and pretty soon they just figured they'll just leave it. You know, it is here. It's in our neighborhood, and that's a problem.
Very true.
In any case, our discussion is going to have to start to wind down, but I would love to kind of go through with each of you from the top, if I can. Again, an action item. I've been writing things down, and I see that visiting the Moore Center is something I recommend. Looking at our contacts and our phone, I think that's a really interesting point. Speaking up when we see people doing the wrong thing or saying something wrong, not being afraid to speak up for the right thing. That's an important thing. the general concept of education, supporting education, helping our local schools. That's key, I think. Anybody else, an action item, something that they can do when we log off tonight, you know, something that we can close with, an action item. Anybody, any of our speakers have a final action item that I've missed?
I'm in need of one. I'm in need of an action item.
Sure,
Out my
Paul.
window is a house with a flag upside down. As an insurrectionist, how can I break that? How can I break into that and make contact with that family, white family? Any suggestions?
Great question.
I'll say they
And-
haven't done me
Can
any.
you repeat it?
I said, out my window is a house with an American flag upside down, obviously representing support of the insurrection. And I'm asking for an action, what I can do to try and break the barrier. They've seen my Biden signs and whatever I've had in front of my house, and nobody's done me any harm except once the sign was stolen. But what could I do to make friends with these people and break that barrier?
You know, I was just going to say, Bonnie, I don't know about that particular situation, but sometimes
Wait.
you don't waste your time on that person. You go to the next house, which maybe just has another flag out there that's offensive, but not so offensive. Or, you know, it's just like when we participate in political campaigns, and we get to a door and somebody just doesn't want to hear it. We go on to the next door where we can have a conversation. So maybe, you know, you can't necessarily break down the barrier with everyone, but maybe your time is better spent elsewhere. And perhaps, you know, different panelists has some different advice, but that's something I would consider.
Thank you.
I'd like to say,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Karen.
okay, I just want to say, you know, the one suggestion, like Sonia was saying, breaking bread together with people sometimes. Maybe if you have a little event or something, maybe take a meal over, or you know, share some pie or piece of cake or something like that with them. So I just want to share this with you to start the conversation. I find myself a lot of times in the midst of a bunch of MAGA hats and all that sort of stuff. I think part of my purpose on this earth is to make peace. So I don't, in my younger days, that was a stereotypical type young Black female, you know, that would fight out, but not because I would start something, but because I was defending someone that I felt was treated wrong, or the kids would pick on somebody or something like that. But as I got older, I learned how to use my mind a whole lot better. And when I find myself in those situations now, well, everybody knows, most of my friends here know that I sing karaoke a lot, and I just find myself in the midst of stuff. But then you sit down and have conversations with people, and it tends to let them see you differently, some of the things that they were thinking about you at some point, you know. So like Sonia said, break bread with them or something like that. You know, you don't totally ignore them. Do something kind. Maybe bring the garbage can in one day and say, you know, I saw it out there, and anything that you can do to let them see you as a human being instead of that little monkey on the wall that they might have thought you were. That I think that helps sometimes.
And by the way, we have several interesting suggestions that are in the chat. There's somebody is suggesting The Sum of Us: What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together, by Heather McGee, an excellent book.
Bill, Sonia has something she wants to say, I believe.
I think she might be recommending that we go to beyondbarriersusa.org. It's the organization that Jeff Schoep founded. Acacia, did you want to speak up? Yes. An excellent suggestion. And somebody had asked what it was. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a wonderful resource on this topic. Southern Poverty Law Center. If you've not been there, it's worth going to. And again, HTTPS beyondbarriersusa.org is the organization that Jeff Schoep founded. Folks, I think it's about time for us to wrap it up. But as we do this, I hope we can pull everybody off of mute for just a moment, and then we can all give our wonderful speakers a round of applause. You're all off mute. Everybody, please. You know what? If I could, I'd stand up and I'd be out of the field of view, but the truth is we're all giving you a standing ovation. Thank you so much. What a wonderful night, a wonderful opportunity to examine a very difficult subject. The Space Coast Progressive Alliance wants to welcome all of you for being here. And I would like to remind everyone that the program must not end here. Those action items we've already talked about: visiting the Moore Center, checking the contacts on your phone, speaking up when you see wrong, helping to educate folks that would benefit from education. Don't let the program end here. Our next meeting will be August 5th, and it's an open discussion about planning for the future of our organization, the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. We hope those of you that are members will be here. Those of you that are guests, please come back. It's an important discussion we need to have about planning for the future. Again, I want to say thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. Again, hopefully this has been recorded, and we're going to be putting it out on Facebook. And it will be distributed for other folks to look at that weren't here to join us tonight. Thanks to all of you. Thank you so much. By the way, the Action Projects Committee, those of you that are on the APC, please stay on as we say goodnight to everybody else. I'm going to ask the APC members to stay on with us. We'll have a quick discussion. And I want to say good night, everyone. We'll look forward to seeing you August 5th. Good night, everyone.
Good night.